working with the implement. Today we're still talking about the discus. We're not outside throwing yet. We're talking about the discus and how to properly align your fingers on the discus to get the optimal amount of release and spin. Now, I've traveled around the U.S., I've worked at coaches' clinics, and I've worked at throwing camps all around the country. And no matter what state I go to, no matter what age group I work with, for athletes who are just starting out throwing the discus, one of the biggest complaints, one of the biggest issues that I hear is that the discus is coming off the middle finger instead of the first finger. And what that means is coaches will tell their athletes, and it's 100% true, coaches will tell the athletes that as the discus comes off the hand, the last finger that that discus will touch is that first finger, that index finger. So it's going to roll and pop right off the index finger. The issue is it's coming off the middle finger. It's coming off the finger before and never coming off the first finger properly. Now this is something that can haunt discus throwers for a few weeks when they first start out. It's a lot easier just to teach the proper way to do it at first. Take the 5-10 minutes it takes, and that way you nip that problem in the bud. You never have to worry about it again. Here's how you correct it and the reasons why it happens. If you were to think of the discus, this is a men's 2-kilo discus. If you were to think of the discus as a clock, you would have 12 o'clock right up top here, and you'd have 6 o'clock right down here at the bottom. Basically, if you were to draw that line right down the middle, the discus would be separated right in half. 50% of the weight is going to be on the left side, 50% of the weight is going to be on the right side. Now, most athletes, when they start throwing, they take their hand, they just pick up a discus, take the hand, plop the hand on there, get in the circle, and let it rip. Well, if you notice, what finger is closest to 12 o'clock? My middle finger. If 12 o'clock is that midline, if 12 o'clock is that balance point where you've got 50% of the weight on one side and 50% of the weight of the other, and my middle finger is right on that balance point, what finger do you think the discus is going to come off of? Well, obviously, as it's thrown, the disc is going to come off the middle finger because that's that balance point. That's the tipping point of where both halves of the discus meet. It's right on the middle finger instead of the first finger. How do we correct that? It's real simple. All you want to do is take your hand, put your finger, line that finger up just like it was the hand of the clock, where you've got the knuckle down at 6 o'clock and the finger, the point of the finger, the tip of the finger right in the middle. And all you're going to do is slide the hand up so the finger's at 12 o'clock. Well, now what you see is you've got 50% of the weight of the discus is now on the outside of the hand. It's now between the forefinger, the index finger, and the thumb. The other fingers are going to wrap around. This is where it's personal. This is where you have to figure out what feels best for you. You can see I'm sort of a medium grip. Some people open their hands up real wide. Some people keep them closed. Some put the first finger and the middle finger together and leave the other ones really wide. This is where you have to figure out what works best for you. Finger up to the top, drop that knuckle over, and wrap the other fingers around. Now, why is it so important to have the weight on the outside, to have the weight closest to the thumb? Well, a coach of mine explained this to me really, really easily. We used to throw everything that we could that wasn't a discus. That way we could focus on the footwork and focus on our hips, focus on the release without actually worrying about how far the disc was flying. We'd throw metal pipes, we would throw water bottles that were filled with sand, traffic cones, and he also had bowling pins. Now, he did a test with us where he lined us all up. There was about 10 of us out at the circle that day, and he gave us a bowling pin and said, I want you to throw this bowling pin as far as you can, like a baseball, overhand. Every single one of us, all 10 of us, held the bowling pin by the skinny end so that the fat part of the bowling pin was on top of our hand. We took it and we whipped it as far as we could, making sure that the heavier part was on top so it would whip around in the air. And as it whipped around in the air, it would go faster and faster and fly further. No one picked it up like a baseball by the fat end and just tried to throw it overhand. Everyone picked it up by the skinny end and whipped it end over end over end. It's the same idea with the discus. By having half of the weight on the outside, having half of the weight from here over, you are going to cause that same whipping effect. So when the discus comes out of the hand, you're going to have 50% of the mass of that implement that's going to want to turn and pop off that first finger as fast as it possibly can. And while that's happening, you're also going to be actively whipping your arm. You're actively going to be pushing off the first finger, and all of those things added up together is going to ensure that you get the most amount of spin that you possibly can on that implement and have it fly further.